Hello and welcome to Happy Horror Time. My name is Tim Murdoch.
And my name is Matt Emmert. Chatting with today's special guest is a dream come true, which is ironic because she starred in the original A Nightmare on Elm Street. She played Tina, Freddy Krueger's first ever on-screen kill, and what a vertigo-inducing bloodbath that was. She has an extensive resume in horror across multiple decades with roles in films like Shakma, The Graves, Hunter's Moon, and an incredible performance in 2016's The Id. Oh, and did I mention she appeared in two of the most iconic 80s films, Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Better Off Dead? Yeah. Please welcome to the podcast, Amanda Wyss.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm so happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you. You know, we read that you grew up not too far from LA in Manhattan Beach, California, and started doing theater at a young age, including a production of The Bad Seed. So what initially got you interested in acting? And we got to know what it was like to play Rhoda in The Bad Seed.
Well, you know, my older sister was studying theater at UCLA, and she ended up getting cast in really beautiful plays around town, and I would tag along with her. And so when I was 11, she was doing a play at a theater, and their next production was going to be The Innocents by William Inge, which is also a very creepy play with this young girl named Flora. And they asked me to read for it, and I got it. So I did that play at first, and I loved it, and it was really challenging. I was a little kid. And then the following season, they did The Bad Seed. And so they asked me to read for that. And so then I played Rhoda. And I just remember thinking, I mean, I was just figuring it out as I was going along, but I really loved doing it. And my dad came to see it, and he was sitting behind the theater critic from the LA Times. And the guy leaned over to the person next to him, right? And he didn't know that my dad was sitting behind him. And he said, I wouldn't let that little bitch in my house because I was just so evil. And my dad was like, guess she's doing a good job.
I love that. I have not heard you mention it because that's the thing. It's like The Bad Seed is iconic in horror and theater and everything. And that character, like way before there was like The Omen and The Good Son and stuff. So you got to play one of the original child villains.
Totally. And it was interesting. Sorry for the cough drop.
No worries.
As a kid, figuring that out, like that it was okay to be that bad. And I was surrounded by really powerful, talented adults with the innocence as well. You know, so I was really learning good habits as an actor about preparation, memorizing your lines, being on time, being a good team player. So I was really learning all these things that have been, you know, like my base in my entire career. And it was fun playing because Flora, you know, in The Innocents too, they're both just messed up kids. And I don't know, it was just interesting that I got to play both those. They're sort of both iconic, troubled little girls. And I got to do them both. And it was really cool. And I learned a lot about freedom and, you know, going someplace inside you to have access to that. And also just the world of pretend and imagination at a young age. And I was able to carry that
you have
on.
a solid foundation.
And we also heard you mention that you did Pepsi commercials early in your career. Now, any big slogans or jingles you remember doing for them? And most importantly, did they give you huge amounts of free Pepsi?
No to the free Pepsi. That was my first commercial. I was still in high school, and I was a beach girl who took a Hobie cat out into the ocean. Never done that in my life. And I think when I auditioned for it, I said, oh yeah, I know how to take a boat out from the shore. Cause I was still a kid, and my agent had said, always just say yes to everything. I was like, okay, yeah, I totally know how to sail a Hobie cat off the sand.
I don't even know what a Hobie cat is, by the way.
It's like a two pontoons and a like net and then a sail. They're a sailboat, but they're instead of one hull, there's two pontoons or hull type things on either side. Anyway, so I get to the beach, and it never even occurred to me I was going to have to tell them I didn't know how to do it. And they were like, what's going on? Like, can you do this? And I was like, no. And so it was a big deal. They tried to fire me, but they couldn't get anybody else. And so they had to hire a stunt person to come and take the Hobie Cat out. So that was my first job, my first professional job.
I guess that's why they didn't give you the free Pepsi.
I think so. And then they didn't continue me with that campaign. But then I got a Sprite campaign with Sherry Belafonte. And we were like the roller skating beach girls that would spin around and drink our Sprite.
Oh, I love her. I do.
Me too. She's amazing. She's amazing.
And growing up, were you a fan of horror films? Did any have an impact on you? Like, could you not sleep at night?
First of all, the only horror films I ever saw, ever in my entire life, even up to filming Nightmare on Elm Street, were old black and white, sort of, Bela Lugosi kind of things on TV. In the theater, I saw The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. That was about as scary as I went. In all honesty, I don't like being scared. I just don't like it. And I don't like seeing horrific things that my brain hadn't thought of. Like especially things like body horror, like where they're torture porn
Like,
stuff. I just don't
likes to do that.
Yeah. I have seen his movies. I don't want things in my head that are going to disturb me. And I know it's also a release valve. I understand the power of horror as an actual release valve for even like lizard brain fears or inherited fears or ancient cell memory fears. I just don't like being scared. And I'm a terrible audience member. Heather Langenkamp, who played Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street, she and I have gone to a couple horror movies. And one in particular was her movie, a movie she did that's wonderful called Home. And I screamed inappropriately through the whole thing. So I ruined all the jump scares. I ruined the movie for everyone. And I did the same thing for the new Friday the 13th. We were at a horror convention. It might have been in Chicago years ago. And they screened the movie. And I just screamed and was so scared out of proportion to what was happening that it literally ruined the movie for everyone. And
I think that's the best kind of audience member at a horror movie because it makes it more interactive and fun. Like I love being in a full theater watching a horror film where people are like squealing and reacting and that kind of thing. It makes it fun. So now, even though we're a horror podcast, I have to ask you about starring in 1982's Fast Times at Ridgemont High, not just because we're going through your career chronologically, but because it's just such a classic film. You played Lisa, the girlfriend of Judge Reinhold's character, Brad. So any fun stories or memories from working on that film with that incredible cast?
You know what? The whole experience was fun. Everybody was so young, and Cameron Crowe's script was so fantastic. And Amy Heckerling, I'm just in awe of her, and I'm such a huge fan of her entire career and she's just so skilled and talented as a director and leader. And it was just a lot of fun, and we were all young. I mean, just barely out of high school. And I think, like Phoebe was a teenager, and we were all new to the business. And for the most part, I'd done a couple of TV movies, and Jennifer had obviously done stuff, and Sean had come off of Taps and something else, I think. And so we were all very serious, but having fun. And it was just fun. And I remember like the highlight one day for me was that Nancy Wilson came on set to visit Cameron. And I was such a big Heart fan. I was like, oh my God, and she's so beautiful and she was so nice. So
that's awesome.
And some of us are still friends and acquaintances. And it was just fun. And it was neat to watch people work and to be in with so many other actors, within about your age, and seeing all the different ways people were working. And the interesting thing about that movie is every single actor in that movie either went on to be a huge movie star, like a journeyman character actor like me, or left the business and are hugely successful. Like literally every single person in that film. And you talk about like, what kind of magic in that casting is there? It's just kind of amazing, really.
Yeah, it is really amazing. That's why it's like when you think about the cast, like sometimes I forget some of the people in the cast because so many big stars came from that movie.
Oh my God. Anthony Edwards, Eric Stoltz, Nick Cage, obviously Sean Penn, David Price, who had a smaller role but went on to be a director. Kelly Maroney was a huge soap star at the time.
Yeah, Ryan's Hope, is that right?
Yeah. And obviously Jennifer and Phoebe and Judge. I mean, he did so many funny movies, and I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. It's insane. Yeah,
I know, it's crazy. And but before we jump into A Nightmare on Elm Street, we noticed that this film was not your first time doing horror. You were in a 1981 made-for-TV horror movie called The House Possessed. Now, since we were not able to watch that, can you tell us a little about this film and your role in it?
Oh my gosh, I'm literally just in the beginning, and it is me and, oh my gosh, the actor you would know, and I can't think of his name, but it was Lisa Eilbacher and Parker Stevenson. I think they buy a house and the house is possessed, obviously the title. But so I play this young girl that me and my boyfriend, I forget why we're breaking into their house. We climb over the fence. We do something, but I get murdered by a possessed garden hose, because as one would when you go into
now we have to see
I'm
this
gonna track down this film.
And the thing that was great is it was an Aaron's. It might have been a Spelling Goldberg back when they were partners, Leonard Goldberg and Aaron Spelling, but Candy Spelling picked out my wardrobe, and it was like roller skating shorts with pantyhose, because you had to wear pantyhose. I don't know, it was kind of like an 80s thing.
So
and this outfit, it was just so it was so crazy and over the top. It's very 80s. And I stayed friends with Lisa Eilbacher for quite a long time after. She was really interesting. She also, I think her sister
Beverly
was
Hills
on
Cop, right?
Yes. And she was in so many TV movies, and she and her sister is either her or her sister, I think, was also on Ryan's Hope or something like that. But she was great. Parker Stevenson was great. And they made this movie make sense. And that was just back in the day when they would do these really fantastic TV movies. Like that would never, they were just so fun, and some were scary, some were not.
I really miss TV movies of
I
the
do
week.
too, because there actually aren't TV movies anymore, because TV is almost primarily streaming, which is just straight to stream. So it's just movies. But remember, like the movie of the week,
they would take like sitcom stars and put them in movies, and you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, it's Kirstie Alley from Cheers." That was the most random. I don't know.
No, but it's true, and there's nothing that's equivalent, because there's Netflix movies and stuff, but they're really made to seem like a theater the movie, and these were really just made for you to watch from your home.
I know.
And they were just, oh my God. I got to do one with Lonnie Anderson.
Oh my God.
Of My Mother's Secret Life.
I loved it.
Wait, what was her secret life?
She was a prostitute, as one would
Lonnie.
be. And it was the highest rated TV movie for many years, because we forget, she was probably the biggest star in the entire world for a while. When it was originally being done, I got cast to play, Farrah Fawcett was going to play the mom. And then she backed out, and Lonnie Anderson did it, and it was so fun. I love her. We're still in contact. She's an amazing human being.
I love that you're still friends.
Yeah,
that warmed my heart.
You know what
She's amazing.
I miss, remember in TV movies after the last commercial when they would say no further commercial interruptions, and you'd be so excited. I remember watching horror movies on TV, and you're like, oh God, this is the end and no more commercials. We just don't have that anymore.
I personally am a big fan of commercials. I like to go to the restroom. I like to get some popcorn. I don't know. I need a
Tim
break.
wants commercials and movies, and like at the theater. Anyway, so moving on to one of our favorite horror films of all time, 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I've heard you mention that all the girls had to first read for the role of Nancy. So do you remember what scene you were originally reading, and can you tell us about how the rest of the process went?
I can't remember the scene. I'm going to assume it was probably one of the ones where she's talking to her mom, and I don't think it was a scene with Freddy. It might have been, but I don't remember. So the process was, my agent sent me the script, but promptly told me not to do it. They were like, it'll kill your career. Because this was before horror was not mainstream at all. You know, major stars weren't really doing horror films.
But they were cool with you getting killed by the garden hose in This House Possessed.
But it was TV.
Because
so
it was and it was Aaron Spelling, and he was like the biggest thing, you know? So like, you know, because they were like, you're a TV person, which is, I'm totally fine with. I still do mostly television. But I was like, well, you sent me the script. And they were like, well, the director had asked for me because he had seen My Mother's Secret Life. And he thought, you know, I was a talented young actor or whatever. So I was like, well, I'm going to go at least meet him. And so I read, and, you know, the reading, it didn't go that great. I didn't really understand what I didn't know how to play this part really. And, you know, and then when you see Heather, she's just so perfect for it. I mean, obviously I wanted the lead role, but that wasn't going to be. So I get a call back, which I was surprised about, for Tina. And I was like, okay, I was kind of disappointed. It was such a small part. I didn't really want to do it. But I went back, and when at the callback, he had already put us all together. It was Johnny, Jesus Garcia, or Nick Corey back then, Jesus, Heather, and myself. We all like kind of read together. And he told us in the room we had the part, which never happens. So it was like during the initial thing, he just figured out who he wanted. And I mean, he was just so precise. And Wes, I'm speaking of, so for anybody that wasn't following my ramble, because I'm kind of jumping around. I know. I'm just rambling.
What was your initial thought of the script when you sat down and read it from cover to cover?
I thought it was so scary. And I liked reading scary books. I still like reading scary books like Dean Koontz and you know, there's just, you know, The Exorcist. I sort of more of a reader than watching the movies for scary things. But when I was talking to Wes, I was like, this reads like such a good scary novel. And that was like what I was really taken with, is that cinematically I could see it, but the script is really good. Like, it's a good read. And, you know, it doesn't happen very often. I've done a lot of things that are just awful, and I've done them because I needed to get my health insurance and I needed the money, whatever. I was like, hadn't worked in a long time. I'll do it. And you read these scripts and you're like, but this was not like that. This was just such a great story. And Wes, first somebody had once said years after, but now when I look back, I see that it was true with Nightmare on Elm Street. But I'd seen a panel of Blumhouse filmmakers at Monsterpalooza in Los Angeles not that long ago, before the pandemic. But I digress again. But anyway, on the panel, someone said, all great horror is intrinsically sad. And that has always stuck with me. And I look back at Nightmare on Elm Street, and it was really just it's a sad story about all these lost teenagers who have formed their own little family because they're latchkey kids. And Wes has said that in his mind, it was sort of a commentary on that those kids were in that era, the first generation of latchkey kids, really. Moms have gone back to work or moms have had to go to work. A lot of divorces. So there was a lot of kids that had no supervision, that were out in the world alone, forming these little friend families. And so I feel like that's an interesting commentary there. And then, but if you take the slasher out of that movie, it's still a great story. Yeah. It would just be a drama or a thriller or something. So it's kind of.
I just enjoyed this story between Nancy and her mom hiding drinks everywhere. I mean, that alone's interesting.
Well, I also found Tim loves soaps, if you can't tell that.
Yes.
Well, but I also found it's really interesting what you said about the horror being sad, because what I also found very sad about the film is that these poor teenagers have to pay for their parents' sins. Do you know what I mean? It's like now obviously the parents, you know, the true sinner is Freddy, the murderer, but the parents took it upon themselves themselves to kill him, and now he's getting back at them through killing their poor innocent kids.
And your mom said, you better stop that kind of dreaming.
Well, so your character Tina has been compared to Janet Leigh's in Psycho because you're basically the main character until you get murdered. But the cool thing is your part doesn't end then, because even after your death, you're in Nancy's nightmares. But at the time, knowing, your agent was kind of like, don't do horror. How did you feel about getting in a role in a horror movie, particularly this one?
Yeah, they 100% campaigned against me not doing it. And they really didn't work much for me after that, and eventually let me go because I defied what they wanted. So, I mean, I'm so grateful for all the gifts that from Nightmare on Elm Street, but it definitely made, I had a very powerful agent that stopped working. So my career kind of never really did take off, but not because of Nightmare on Elm Street, but because my agents didn't put the work in after that. But I loved doing it, and we're all such good friends and have stayed friends all these years. And it's almost like we were like college friends or something, like that you stay friends with all these years. And, Heather and I are really, really close friends, and we're just like, I don't know, like there's some magic in that movie. And I mean, the whole franchise, we're all friends, but I think particularly the first one, and then New Nightmare 2, I think is really spectacular. There was just some magic in that. And Wes was magical, such a great leader, so smart, so funny, very professorial. He had kids sort of our age, that might be a little bit younger, but teens. And so he really spoke to us. He really knew how to speak to us and help us tell the story, because that's part of it is your job as an actor, to know your own personal arc, but also know where you fit in the world that's being created by the writers and directors out there. And, and he was really able to guide in a really great way that I could understand, because I remember asking him, I was like, I don't know how to be in a horror film. And he's like, I didn't hire you to be in a horror film. I hired you because of your talent. And you just find the truth in everything you do. And I always thought that was such great direction, because that is something I understood from being in plays, and because I hadn't done that many things yet. And this was even more grueling than being killed by a garden hose. But,
no, but that's a great advice. Find the truth in everything you do.
And you do. And then he also taught me some things that I use later, although I except for the id, I haven't really been in a horror film that I'm super proud of. No offense to any of the filmmakers that I've been in their films, and I'm super grateful to always be working. But Wes taught me a couple of things like, but you have to find the truth in it. Otherwise, it's like, say the killer is up here. Find a reason that you never look up, but it has to be truthful. You can't look stupid, because you see people do that all the time, and then they just look so dumb that they're not looking in the right direction. But if you have a true, authentic, committed reason why you're not looking up, it makes the audience will lose their mind, because they're so scared for you, as opposed to being like, you're so stupid. Why are you going? Like, why are you opening the door? Like, if you're going outside and everyone knows you're probably going to get killed if you go outside, you have to have such a great reason that instead of the audience being mad at you, they're scared with you. And I love that. And that's like mad skills to pull that off, because you have to really find some reason that you can make, that you believe 100%, so that the audience also does, that you're going outside, even when you shouldn't, and you see it you've seen movies where it's done really well, and you see where it's not, because I think not everyone knows that that's that trick or that place to put your skill. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes,
no.
and I want to take your acting class. Are you? I mean, Amanda, you just took me there.
No, but that, like, I think that makes a lot of sense because it's almost like, you know, when people get angry at people for dropping the knife in horror movies or other,
Yeah.
but that makes sense. It's like maybe there's if you can find a reason and sell it to people, then we can believe it more. So that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yes, and it makes it scarier, even though it's still scary if you're mad at the people. I've yelled at the screen, you know, often, like, you're so dumb. Like, why are you going in the basement? Like, you need to, like, use your imagination more than you've ever used it to come up with a reason that you have to go in the basement. And that maybe you start that way before you're at the door to go in the basement. It's just got to be something, you know, and I've also been in movies where I don't know, the script is so lame and I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do to make it, like, I can't, I don't know why I'm in this room. And so sometimes then when it's like that, you just do nothing, because being really still is also scary. Like if you just get really still, but calm, you know, I don't know. So those are just some of my horror hacks.
No, and those are great memories, especially of Wes Craven, you know, who is a true master of horror, and just getting to work with him, because, you know, we've seen him in so many interviews and he seems so kind and soft spoken. And I assume that's how he was as a director also, like, meaning, you know, kind, helpful, never too stern with people.
No, very kind and, very calm. I mean, I very rarely saw him lose his cool. And anytime he did, it was really because we were so low budget and the shooting schedule was, I think we only filmed for 6 weeks or something. It was very tight, ambitious schedule for no money. I mean, I think that Robert and Heather are better historians of the franchise, or especially of the first one, and obviously Robert, all of them. But I think, like, we ran out of money halfway through or something. I don't really remember that happening, but it could have been a time when I wasn't there, because I wasn't there through the whole thing. I was there kind of in the beginning and the end of the 6 weeks. So, but yeah, so the only time I ever saw Wes lose his cool was, you know, more just people not moving fast enough, or, you know, more out of worry that he wasn't going to get what he needed filmed.
No, that makes sense. You know, so we want to go to your iconic murder scene. And for anyone who doesn't remember Tina's murder, I'm going to take you through it because it's probably the most intense scene of the entire movie. So in the nightmare Tina's having, you're struggling with Freddy. But in reality, first you're thrashing around by yourself in the bed. Then your chest gets slashed with 4 slashes. Your body rises up above the bed, spins around, knocks your boyfriend Rod over. Then you get dragged up the wall, across the ceiling, before falling onto the bed and onto the floor. So can you take us through, because I've heard different things about how the room was set up, but how that was all filmed and why it became so disorienting?
So it was a full bedroom, built on a fulcrum, really. It was in a very, very big soundstage at the old, I think it was the Desilu studios where they used to, or Desi and Lucy owned it. I think at one point they filmed I Love Lucy there. Beautiful old studio with just really neat, really great place. But anyway, so very big soundstage. So they built the room, and it was built on like a fulcrum, like I said, and literally people cranked the room. So the room you had to use a ladder to get into it, and the room could literally spin around. Like, so it would, you know, here's the room, and it would just spin around. So everything in the room was nailed down, glued, staple guns, shellacked, nothing moved. And then they'd taken 2 sort of airplane seats and affixed them to the wall, which is where Jacques Aiken, the cameraman, DP, sat strapped in. So he went around with the room, but his perspective was always the normal, what you would see if you were leaning up against the wall of a bedroom. Mm-hmm. So I was always on the floor, and as the room would spin, I would propel myself to the next place, and then we would go along, and then it would spin again, and I would propel. So I was always on the floor, Jacques Hadekin was actually going around, but he didn't get disoriented because his visual perspective was the room upright in the right place. So we rehearsed it a lot because it was only one room, very low budget. Once we put the blood in there, that was it. So it was kind of a one take situation, but we shot it in bits. And so
when you say rehearsed it, are you talking full emotion screaming every time?
No.
Okay.
Not so much that, just the choreography of it. We had to know exactly what every person involved had to know exactly what was happening. So we were going around in the room and trying to figure out how to make me look like I was being dragged. And I'm athletic and I'd been a gymnast, so I was able to make it look like I was being dragged, which, because it was dragging me. And, but it was invisible, as everyone remembers. So we rehearsed that a lot. I was going around and around. We finally start filming after a long time of rehearsing, at least an hour of rehearsing. So I've been in this room a long time. We start going, and I'm worked up and screaming and giving, we wanted to make sure this scene was emotional and true and meaningful, because it sets up that I was kind of the red herring, and if I can die, anybody can die. And he just wanted it to be emotional. And so we're going around, and I look down. No, I look up. I'm sorry. I'm on the floor. I look up, and the bed is over me. And I lost my mind. I had been looking at the floor most of the time because I'm just screaming and looking at the camera and stuff. And I looked up, and I thought I was on the ceiling, and I thought I was going to fall. And I was screaming, and they had to call cut. I was like, I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. And I don't know why I was sticking to the ceiling. I literally was just out of it. And Wes stuck his head through this window, and he was standing there, and he's like, Amanda, you're on the floor. And I was like, we're going to fall. We're going to fall. Get down, we're going to fall. And I just kept saying, we're going to fall. And he's like, you're on the ground. I'm like, we're going to fall. We're all going to die. We're going to fall. We're on the ceiling. We're going to fall. And so he's talking to me, and all of a sudden he just goes, he was so disoriented, and he goes, oh my God, we have to get this child out of this room. Like he couldn't even be in there for like 2 minutes. And so we went back to doing it, and he just kept telling me, you're on the floor. You're on the floor. You're going to be fine. Just, use that here. And so I did. And there's a great photo of Wes. We're both crouched down because I just couldn't stand up. I was like, I somehow thought if I stayed crouched, squatted, I wasn't going to fall from the ceiling onto the bed. I don't know.
No, but that makes sense. Your brain is so powerful. And I can imagine that playing tricks on you because you're not used to seeing a bed on the ceiling.
No. And I just love this picture because he's crouched down with me, and he just was holding me, and he's like, you're literally on the floor. And there's no amount of him saying that I was going to believe. And I just go, I don't understand why we're not falling. Like, he's just like, okay. So, but it took me, I was disoriented definitely a day or two after that. Like, I could barely drive home after filming. I was just so completely, and to this day, I get swimmy if I'm up high, and I don't know, maybe I was swimmy before, but definitely, that definitely did something to my ear crystals or whatever the things are that keep your balance.
To be honest, I feel like I'm getting like a little bit of vertigo just thinking about, well, you're describing it so well.
I've seen A Nightmare on Elm Street a million times. Like, if it's on, I will watch it. But there is a point in the film where you are like midair. Was that you or a stunt woman?
That was a stunt woman. And it was so dumb that but the rules are they had to use her to fall from the ceiling to the bed. And at the time, it was harder to find. Now there's a million stunt women, usually in television, because I did a lot of things where I was squibbed, which is the little explosive packets that make it look like you've been shot. I don't know if they use them anymore. They were very dangerous. I seem to be squibbed all the time. I was always getting shot
I've
doing
heard
something.
a lot of stories about squibs, no pun intended, backfiring.
100%. You know, when they put like a little pad on you and you're like, no, that really hurt. Okay. I don't know. Maybe more padding next time. But just the rules are you had to use a stunt person for that fall. It's just SAG rules or somebody's rules. I don't know. But anyway, so back then, usually little boys were my stunt double because I was pretty tiny and I've always been pretty skinny and you know, but anyway, they brought in this person who's amazing, doesn't look like me at all, is like at least twice my size and has like this really bad bob. And people don't seem to notice it, but I just think it's so glaringly obvious that it's not me and obviously they couldn't use a boy because you see my underwear and I don't know, you know, it's like probably wouldn't have worked, but anyway, it's very strange. So I've always just been like, I can't believe they didn't just let me do that. They let me like almost die in a spinning room.
Well, if you had fallen, if you had done that fall, I think that would have messed with you for life because if you were as terrified as you were about that, talk about disoriented. But like, there's the fall part, but there's also the part where you get just lifted up and spun around. Was that you or was that the stunt person?
No, that's the stunt person.
Wow.
I mean, I never even thought about it. Like, I don't question it.
I did notice the bob on the person who falls.
It's not even my hair color.
Maybe,
yeah, I did notice the bob.
Yeah.
And I just assumed it was blood in the hair.
Yeah. And then I did do the bounce from the bed to the floor because I was like, come on, let me in, coach. This is dumb. Like none of this. I'm not buying this. So
that's funny. So, you know, moving on to some of your co-stars in the film. Now, we've heard from literally everyone we've had on this podcast who's been in a Nightmare on Elm Street film that Robert Englund is this incredible storyteller. So rather than simply asking you, what's Robert Englund like, which, you know, you'd probably say a storyteller. Were there any big stories you remember him telling or any big memories of like a story he told everyone on set or something like that?
You know what? I don't remember specific stories. When we were all getting our makeup done in the morning, obviously, you know, his took hours and hours. And so it would be like us kids and Robert sitting in the makeup room. And he would just talk about, because he was in so many amazing movies and he's a theater geek and is brilliant on stage. And so he knew that my background was theater and he would just tell these great stories of plays he'd been in and summer stock he'd done. And he was in one of my favorite movies and called Big Wednesday about these surfers because he was a surfer. I grew up in a beach town. We were both surfers. And so he would tell me stories about that movie because he knew that was really, I really want to know about that movie. And, but even like now today, like when I go to travel, he's been everywhere in the world and he just can tell you, gosh, what's the best place to go see? Where's the best place to get, you know, tapas if you're here and the best pasta you'll ever have here. And he just knows all that stuff. But when we were filming, he would just be doing stuff right up until they said action. And then he was just, he was just very loose. But mostly the stories were just about all these great people he had worked with, and both him and John Saxon, because John Saxon as well was the most gorgeous human man
I agree.
ever.
Yeah.
Just so gorgeous, like 80 years old, totally gorgeous. I mean, he had worked with everyone. Audrey Hepburn. I mean, you just name it. He'd been Marlon Brando, like Bruce Lee. I mean, oh my gosh. And he was more reserved on set.
I think that makes him more
sexy.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
He's just so like, I mean, I just would stare at him on set. And I'm sure he was like, why is that girl staring at me? And I'm just like, I think you're so beautiful.
And we noticed that you're still friends with Heather Langenkamp. Like, were you guys instant friends when you walked on set?
We really were. And we would sit every day between scenes doing the crossword puzzle. Heather's super smart. You know, I think her degree's in Russian literature from Stanford or something. She's super, super smart. I think she has two degrees from Stanford. Yeah, she's like she is one of the smartest people I've ever come in contact with. And she's also super truthful. Like, she's very honest. So you don't really want to know her opinion about what you're doing. Don't ask. She might give it to you anyway. But yeah, we were instant friends. We still are. It's like, she's just Gosh, she's one of the best people I know. She's so loving and kind and smart and talented and super generous with her time and her home. And, she has a beautiful marriage and beautiful family. And she's so good. I love all of her. I loved her parents and her. Yeah, she's a neat person.
That's so
really
nice
like
to
her.
hear,
Yeah.
and then of course there's Johnny Depp. Now I have to ask, have you had any contact with him since the film? And why do you think he rarely talks about A Nightmare on Elm Street, considering it's such a popular movie and so many other stars embrace their horror roots?
Well, he was in the Freddy's Dead.
Yeah, but I mean, do you have any
he was in Freddy's Dead?
He had a cameo in Freddy's Dead, which was the sixth film. But he just, do you have any contact with him or what? Or does he, why do you think he rarely talks about this film?
I don't have any contact with him. I didn't really after the film. I really only worked with him like in groups. He was super sweet, super hard worker, had a coach on the set, like really, really serious, hard worker, really nice person. I don't know that he doesn't talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street because I think he's also very, he's not, I see things he signs from it. So, yeah, I don't think he doesn't talk about it. I just think he's been in so many huge things that it's, come on, like all the pirate movie, they eclipse Nightmare on Elm Street by miles. And
I think so.
I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street 1,000 times. You know how many times I've seen the pirate movie? Half of one.
Our listeners will disagree. Just kidding. No, but I know what you're saying. Like,
yeah,
I
think it's eclipsed by it. Like, I don't think many people, when he's being interviewed, ask him about Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm sure if they did, he would talk about it because it's my understanding, because even when they were doing, what's the documentary, Never Sleep Again, he was totally game to do it. They couldn't fit it into his filming schedule. He was like on some island filming pirate movies. So I've never heard he has a thing, but like I said, I don't know him, so I can't speak for him. But I'm going to assume that it's probably not asked about it.
No, that's good to know. That's news to me.
Yeah.
And that's nice to know.
Yeah, because if you've heard that he has a problem with it, I just haven't heard that.
No, I haven't. I just haven't heard, like when you search for, like, I think the last time he commented that's on record is after Wes Craven passed away. And he did say something very nice about Wes with the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, that's good to hear, because maybe we can get maybe sometimes someone will interview and focus on that.
Going to an island.
We're going to an island following him on Pirates 17. So anyway, wanted to move forward to the ending scene of the film when the four friends, are supposedly alive again in the convertible, and then top comes down showing Freddy's stripes, and the mom gets pulled through the window, which is so amazing. So we learned that Wes Craven's original ending was actually supposed to be like more of a happy one where you guys all were alive and the whole thing was just a nightmare. But then apparently Rob Shea wanted a final scare, and we heard that there was even one version where Freddy was driving the car with all of you screaming inside. Do you remember actually filming any of these variations of the ending?
Yes, we filmed many different endings, but and just so you know, we didn't know which one they were using. I obviously liked the one where we were all alive because I wanted to be in more of the films. But I was really sad that Wes didn't ask me to do New Nightmare because there's like, even in Wes's mind, we weren't dead. That even though the final scare, it was all still Nancy's nightmare. Mm-hmm. But that isn't how the franchise played out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't. I think Wes adhered more to that in the three he did. And then I don't know what was the impetus for the other movies or why they made them the way they made them, or what story they like. I feel it seems like each one became a standalone and they didn't really tell any, like some of the franchises, it's more telling of a story over the movies. And I don't think Nightmare on Elm Street, the franchise, did that well at all.
And what did you think when your film was all wrapped, and was there any kind of like red carpet premiere, or like, what did you think seeing it on the big screen for the first time?
Well, okay. True story. I went to the cast and crew screening and I was late and they wouldn't let me in because it was full. The fire marshal wouldn't let me in. Then I went to go see it. I couldn't go to the premiere because I was filming. I think I was filming something. So I missed that. And then I went to go see it in Westwood and the big theater, and it was sold out. And I went, fuck it. Like, I'm not meant to see this movie. I'm just never going to see it. So the first time I ever saw it was on VHS. I was like, my old timey little television watching it. Years after, by the way, years after.
Years after was the first time?
Surprising to
me.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. And so it was crazy. But the first year it was out, that Halloween, I was at my mom's house in Manhattan Beach handing out candy, and little kids were coming up, or teenagers, not little kids, because the movie was still new, dressed like Freddy Krueger. So like by the third one, I was like, I'm in that movie. I play Tina. And they're like, no, you don't. Nobody believed me because it was out of context. I was like, no, I'm Tina. They're like, no, you're not. I'm like, whatever.
I would have started just reciting your lines and saying, really, kids?
I know. And the parents standing there and I'm like, no, I'm really Tina. They're like,
that is so funny. First you mentioned New Nightmare, where, that the kind of meta movie where Heather played herself and Robert played himself and blah, blah, blah. And we would have loved to see you playing yourself opposite. So did you ever consider reaching out to Wes and being like, hey, dude, I'm here. I can do this?
Yeah. You know what? Wes it was so funny because at first he was like, you're so amazing. He thought I was so talented. He really sought me out. And then he liked my work in the first one. And then he just did not want to work with me again. So I don't know why. It's kind of a bummer. They did offer me an extra role in New Nightmare to stand by, or maybe
the funeral scene? Because Jesus Garcia's in that. He's sitting there. Yeah.
Yeah. So they offered me something like $50. And I was like,
I'm good.
No, I don't think so. But you know what was such a big deal? New Line Cinema freaked out that I said no. And they were like, Johnny Depp did,
Freddy's
cameo. And I was like, Johnny Depp's a millionaire. He's doing you a favor. You guys are asking me to do. I'm like, what? I was like, anyway, it was like a really big deal. Wes got mad. And because I was with my agent at the time, obviously wanted all their stars to do the New Line movies because New Line movies were winning a bunch of Oscars. So my agents dropped me over that. So
wait, but because
I'm like, thanks,
no
Wes.
to the cameo in New Nightmare. Oh my God!
I think you should have been way more than a cameo. I mean,
I know, me too. Well, that was what I said. I said, give me a role. I'll do it for free if you give me an actual role.
Yeah, it would have been so cool. The two girls, that would have been so great.
Wow. First off, I've never heard you say this, so thank you for sharing that with us. But I'm shocked to hear that because, and you would think that Wes would understand, of course, give her, especially because John Saxon had a real role, Robert Englund. You would have been great because, to see Amanda and Heather as friends, as Tina and Nancy were friends, and it would have been meta times 10.
I know, it would have been so awesome. Cool. I know, and I tried to reach out to him about that, and but anyway, so somewhere along the line, Wes he did not care for me for some reason, which is sad because I think he's amazing. But he and I'd seen him in person a couple times, and he was really dismissive. So whatever his problem is with me, he took it to the grave.
Oh no.
So,
well, but I'm glad that looking back though, that your experience, it doesn't change your experience on the film.
No, it doesn't change my experience of him. I think, God, he was so talented. And I think obviously the films that he was a part of in the franchise are clearly the best ones. And they're just so well shot. All the actors shine because he's such a good director and the stories are really good. I just think, he went on to do so many other amazing films, but it would have been neat if he had done all the films just because I think his touch is, his touch on things is so good. He's such a brilliant filmmaker, I think, in my opinion. Yeah, just brilliant. Every single one of them was brilliant.
100% agree. So moving on through your career in horror, just a couple questions about a few films, and then we're going to get to the id because we really want to talk to you about, because we were just so impressed by that film and your performance.
That means so much to me.
Yeah. So in 1990, you played Tracy in Shockma, a creature feature in which a bunch of med students are killed by a drugged-out baboon. Now, you have a bunch of scenes with the baboon, which was an actual monkey, and I read that you were terrified of this animal. Is that true? And what was it like working with this baboon?
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so first of all, it was my second film with these filmmakers in Florida. My first one was with Mary Crosby and Andrew Stevens. And it was the Parks brothers, and I think they're both gone now. Just hilarious. There are these guys that they literally struck oil or a gold mine on their property and just became very wealthy and started making movies in Florida.
I want that to happen to me.
I know. It was crazy. And so they offered, I got offered the first one, which I can't think of the name, doesn't matter. Please don't research it. It's terrible, but we had a blast doing it. Just an absolute blast. It was so much fun. We were in Winter Haven, Florida. Then Shockma comes along and they offer it to me, and I read the script and I was just like, well, this can be hilarious. But it never occurred to me that I was working with a baboon. Like, it's like when you read Gone with the Wind, the script, it's like this one little thing and it says Atlanta burns. And you're like, oh, yeah, we'll film that. They'll be fine. It takes like 7 weeks.
Monkey kills me. Oh, no worries.
Yeah, no worries.
I was very lucky. I got to see Shockma in a sold out crowd. If you
Did people love it?
Oh my God. It was people talk about interaction. It was so much fun. I'm so glad I got a ticket because it's one of those experiences you'll never forget.
I did not. I saw it about 2 years ago for the first time.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to tell you, so we get down there and it's the best cast. Such great people in it. Like where I'm like, we were all being paid very well. So people are like, I'll be chased by a monkey. Thank you. So the baboon, the real name was Hurricane. And it was owned by this, and Cox is his name, and I can't think of his first name off the top of my head, but he owned exotic animals and they were all movie star animals. And he had raised Hurricane, basically like Hurricane used to ride around on the back of his motorcycle. Typhoon. Is it Hurricane or Typhoon? I forget. It was like a stormy name.
I feel like it could be Typhoon only because I remember when we were looking this up.
I think it might be Typhoon. And so he couldn't come. He came maybe the first day, but there was another gentleman who was the baboon wrangler. And, they had electric fencing around and they had all these things. But he was actually like a really tender-hearted animal, but in order to get him riled up to do these scenes, well, anyway, the upshot of the whole thing is it really ruined him. Like it did something, and he had to be sent to a sanctuary where he couldn't be around humans anymore. And I mean, it's actually like a really sort of a sad tale for him, but he had a beautiful sanctuary and maybe in a way it's even better because he was living more his authentic life, not as a human pet. But anyway, so you're
saying they fucked this monkey up, basically.
Well,
he was
not the guy
in the film.
He was very good in the film. He's the best thing in the film. Not the owner. It was just, I think the handler who cared for him. Obviously, they just, in order to get him riled up to be mean or chase us and stuff, it wasn't in his nature. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of, I don't know, it kind of broke him back into like a wild animal. But
what did they do to rile him up?
Well, I mean, I don't really remember. And a lot of this I learned because I too got to see it on the big screen recently, but I'll tell you that. But anyway, so we get there and we go to baboon school, basically. Like they're like, don't look them in the eye. That's perceived as a threat. The only person that can look him in the eye is his handler. And that's because that has to be a particular hierarchy. So there's more control. There was other things and I can't really remember them. And I was like, okay. So there's this one scene where he's chasing me down a hallway, and they were just like one of the Parks brothers, or they might have both been directing it. Quite honestly, they were crazy. But they were like, okay, so when I say action, you're going to run down this hallway and push through that. It's a swinging door. But halfway down, we're going to release Typhoon and he's going to chase you. And I was like, well, does anybody know how fast he runs? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, what if he runs faster than me? What's my protection at the other end of the hall? And they're like, oh, you'll be fine. You just have to get through that door. And there's like a guy behind the door and you guys are going to hold the door closed and he's just going to hit the door. And I was like, well, how strong is he? Like, is he like as strong as one guy? Is he stronger than 4 guys? Like, should we have more guys behind the door? Should there be some stopgap halfway down the hallway in case this isn't going? And they were like, so we rehearsed it without him. And we found out like these shoes that we've established that I wear are super slippery on this linoleum. And so I go back and I'm like, well, what if I slip and fall? And the director goes, don't. That was my only question.
Good old safety precautions.
Yeah. So when they said action, I ran like I was in the Olympics. Like I ran so fast that we had to do it again and slow me down slightly because I was so terrified. I mean, like you couldn't even see me on film. I ran so fast. You're like, was that her? So we did that. But we get to the end and I get behind the door and he's hitting the door so hard that like other grips had to run to hold the door shut. So he was just getting so worked up. And, and it's like, basically like he felt threatened by me or whatever. And like, now he was really, really worked up and wanted to do damage. And anyway, so that's kind of the sad end where he never snapped out of that. So cut to, we all had a ball doing it. Christopher Atkins and I would go, we miniature golfed like every night. After there was like this really fun miniature golf course. So we would just go miniature golfing. And obviously, everybody just kind of stuck to themselves. But I used to have nightmares while I was there. We stayed in this hotel and everything was kind of swampy around us. And I kept having nightmares that I'd hit the elevator on my floor and there'd be an alligator in there and it would chase me and try to kill me. And I was like, okay, so I just thought everything was trying to kill me because I was so traumatized by the baboon. But cut to right before the pandemic, I got invited here in LA to, I think, the Vista Theater, like a really beautiful older theater. And they were doing a Shakma retrospective. And so I came and the guy Cox, who I can't think of his first name, and that's where I learned about Typhoon, like that he never recovered. Like he lived out a beautiful life in this sanctuary, probably a better life than being a pet. But that he could never be, handled by humans again. And he always had regrets that he hadn't been there during the filming, but he was doing some other movie. And I think Typhoon was the baboon in the Clint Eastwood movies. I think he was in a lot of movies. He was very famous, that baboon.
Famous baboon, but never got over filming Shakma.
No. And you know what? He was just a happy-go-lucky dude. And we like got him riled. Well, but whatever, like that chasing people and stuff. But the thing was, okay, so for people who haven't seen it, it's a group of college students. We're playing it's basically a live version of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Throughout, we're all science majors or biology science major. I forget. We're like nerds. And for some reason, we're playing the game overnight, locked in the lab with the irradiated baboon who's been drugged. I'm not even sure how. I don't know. I can't remember why.
They were testing something on him, and it instead like backfired and went aggressive. Yeah. And they're like supposed to kill him, but they don't.
It's a cool premise.
And Roddy McDowell was in it. He was in it from Fright Night. Yeah.
Yes, Roddy McDowell. Oh my God, what a beautiful, lovely gentleman. And he was just such the selling point for doing it because I was like, I don't even care what the movie is. I have to be in a movie with Roddy McDowell, and I love Christopher Atkins. And then the little girl was on that hit TV show, something. Yeah, and she was so sweet, and everybody was great. And there's if anybody that is a fan of Shakma, which I hope you are, it's just such a great. I think it's the modern like Plan 9 from Outer Space or whatever that like
Yes,
it's the best worst movie.
If you ever get the opportunity to see it on a big screen, stop everything you're doing and go see it.
Yeah, it's and wait, I was just going to say really quick that there's a really funny YouTube video where somebody has set it to music, but just cuts to all of us going over on the walkie-talkies, because that's also, anybody that hasn't seen it yet, there's a lot of walkie-talkie. So there's just a lot, and everybody going over.
We're gonna have to look for that.
Yeah, there's a great YouTube video. It's just like over, and all the different people saying, because apparently we say it like 500 times. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
When I think about it, I guess it's true.
That is hilarious. So, big jump ahead 19 years to 2009. You appeared alongside horror icons Tony Todd and Bill Moseley in the supernatural slasher, The Graves. Now, in this film, you play a villain who, spoiler alert, gets her throat slit by Tony Todd because your family failed to capture the two main girls. So what was it like making this film and getting murdered by the Candyman himself?
No, you know what? It was so fun to do that movie because I hadn't really done a horror. I mean, I think aside from Shakma, which technically is a horror film, but it's kind of not a horror film. I mean, you know what I mean? Like
it's a thriller.
It's like a creature thriller.
It's a creature thriller kind of thing. But, we'll say horror film. Mm-hmm. So I hadn't really done anything until, in that. And I got offered The Graves. And I was just like, well, this is a who's who of, just everybody in it is great. And, oh my God, it was so much fun. And Tony is just so like serious. He's such a serious actor and just like he's just always he doesn't go in and out of character much. Like he would chat with me. And now when I see him at Comic-Cons and stuff, oh my God, he's like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And I'm like, but that wasn't my experience on the set. And I'd never met him or Bill Moseley. And, I'd seen them at conventions, but I'd never met them, horror conventions. And Bill Moseley is just such a good actor. And by the way, for people he's in every movie, and he was a journalist, and he's super Renaissance man, and he's drop dead gorgeous. Like he's so handsome, and he never plays handsome. He's always does like this. Yeah. He does his stuff, but he's stunning. He's so good looking.
John Saxon handsome.
Rugged, like Sam Shepard handsome. I feel like he's like the horror Sam Shepard. And but he just plays against it. He's like, I don't care. And anyway, I adore both of them. And it was I felt like, oh my gosh. But what was creepy about doing that movie, creepier than being killed by Tony Todd, was we're filming in this old mining town, an old historic mining town outside Windsor, Arizona, or Winslow, Arizona, somewhere. So night falls, they have golf carts taking you back and forth from the trailers to the set and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, some guy starts screaming, and he's like, oh my God, look down, look down, look down. Everybody look down. And the ground was literally moving with scorpions.
Oh, that's
terrifying.
It
was so terrifying. And there was nowhere to go. Like everybody just like leapt up. So when I got killed, I was like, oh my God, like how do we not, I don't want to get bit by a scorpion. That's all I cared about. I was like, so when I fall, like I was like, I'll fall on cement. I don't even care. I just need to know that somebody has put a perimeter around us, and that if I have to lie there, for close-ups and stuff, like I just need to know there's a scorpion wrangler somewhere, making sure I don't get bit by a scorpion.
Scorpions terrify me, and I'm a Scorpio, which is weird.
Oh, man.
But it's like because they're poisonous and they stink for some reason. I don't know. I got to talk to my therapist about that. But I'm terrified of scorpions, and I'm a Scorpio. But who knows? But that sounds scary. Really scary. Yeah, especially because like everywhere. But it sounds like it makes sense for rural, rugged Arizona.
Yeah, the desert. And so, it was just one of those things. So then after that, everyone just walked around with their flashlights facing down. And it was really scary there. Like I got scared a couple times just walking, like he'd walk in these old buildings. And I mean, just the environment was really scary. And the two young leads were wonderful. Claire Grant but the other one, I can't think of her name, but she's gone on to do tons of TV series and things. And they were both really good and really, I thought they added a lot of authenticity and truth to what they were doing. And
no, they did. Yeah.
It was good.
So moving on to 2016, you starred in the psychological thriller The Id, and let me just say, like, both of us, like, your performance was incredible. Like more people need to be talking to you about this film, because even though it's kind of a dark movie, your portrayal of Meredith, she's a woman who cares for her domineering, pretty verbally abusive father. It's just so emotional and well done. So bravo, first off, to you on that performance. What kind of preparation did you do to take on a character as complex as Meredith?
Oh my gosh. First of all, thank you for even telling anybody listening about that movie. It's the best role I've ever had. And I loved doing that movie, even though it was so dark. Well, Tommy Hudson, who directed it, we knew for about a month. I knew for about a month before I got them. In fact, I was filming something else right up until I flew. What movie was I filming? I was out of the state and I flew in. They had a driver pick me up and drive me out to where we were filming, because we were staying out in the desert somewhere because it's all filmed in one house. So I was super committed to the film I was doing, but every night after wrap, Tommy and I would talk on the phone till really late about every scene, what the motivation was, how to get there. And because we knew that I was going to get off the plane and start filming the next day. So that flying home that night, I just sat. It was like a 5-hour flight, and I just went over the script and over it and imagined every scene. And so I had the whole script memorized to start with, which I felt was important for that movie, because we were going to shoot out of order, but I needed to really know where she was at any time, because I don't want to, in case people want to see it, I don't want to give too much away, but in her mental troubles. And oh my gosh, I picked a song and an animal and there was, I had my headphones and I had this song and I just played it on repeat. And every time there was this one verse in this song, it just, for whatever reason, it would make me get to the place I needed to be. And Tommy would, right before he'd say action, he'd take it and he'd put it in his pocket for me, like my little thing. And just we practiced like how he wanted me to move. And I just loved that. I loved telling that story so much. And I've had people come up and say, obviously not the more gruesome aspects of it, but a lot of people that have had to be caretakers to their ailing parents, and how hard it is in the best of circumstances, that movie to an extreme captured feelings that they've had at times, of just that feeling of just that your life no longer matters, and that you're just like, this is it. Like this is, this could go on forever. And like your marriage years are gone, your whatever, like these things. And, so every night while we were filming, Tommy and I, we really stuck together, and we'd go out to dinner and we'd have a salad and I'd have a glass of wine, and we'd talk about what we were going to do the next day. And it was the most collaborative, creative experience I've ever had as an actor. And, I just loved that character so much. And I know that when we did wrap, I just couldn't shake her. Because I never really let her go. And it's not that I stayed totally in character on set, but I did kind of, because it just wasn't a role I could snap in and out of.
Oh yeah.
And, my soon to be husband, but we've been together forever. He one day said, I got to sit you down. We needed to talk. And it was like about a month after we wrapped. And he goes, you got to let her go. Because I hadn't let her go. And he goes, you have to let her go. And I'll start crying now. I was like, but if I let her go, who else is going to take care of her?
Wow.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Like watching the film, yes, your father is abusive and terrible. But there's also, if you take that part out of the movie, there's also just this feeling of sadness because she's stuck. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so there's that whole aspect. But I've known Tommy for years. And how did you meet Tommy?
Oh my gosh. Okay. You know what? I love that you said that about like that it is. And I think that's also what the movie resonates with people is just sometimes we get stuck and also it was very claustrophobic. We never left that house. So there's a lot of that. So I met Tommy through Heather Langenkamp, Tommy Hudson, who also made the documentary and the book Never Sleep Again.
Director of the Id, just for people who get it.
Sean, oh my gosh, Sean, I can't believe I'm not thinking of his name, but he wrote the script and he's lovely, but Tommy directed it. And Tommy is a writer and Tommy does write scripts. He just happened to not write that one. And I can't wait to work with him again. So he and Heather were friends, and Heather used to have this gum company called Malibu Gum. She lives in Malibu and her husband is a surfer. I mean, okay. Her husband is an Academy Award winning special effects makeup artist named Dave Anderson, but he happens to also be a surfer. So she made these gums, and they had, instead of baseball trading cards, they were professional surfer trading cards. So she asked Tommy and I one day, and I'd not met Tommy yet, to go with her down to the beach. I think we went to Hermosa Beach and go around and ask people if they'd be interested in carrying these packets of gum in their surf shops. And so Tommy and I did it, and we had the best day, and that's how we became friends. And then Tommy started managing me for going to horror conventions. So Heather and I were both with him, and he went on to be a manager and do all kinds of things as well. And then he kind of backed out of being a convention manager, but we're still super good friends. And he lives out of the country now, so I don't get to see him sadly as much.
Nice guy.
Yeah,
he's such a nice guy. I love him.
There's one scene in the Id that looks strikingly familiar, and I'm assuming this was an homage. So the bathtub scene where you're daydreaming about your old high school boyfriend, and the camera's positioned very similarly to how it is Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm assuming that was on purpose, correct?
It's a total nod. Yeah, it's an homage to the franchise. And you know what was funny about filming that scene was the house we were filming in it just wasn't very I don't know, it wasn't super clean, but it wasn't like super dirty. But that bathtub, like, we bleached it a lot before because we were like, oh my gosh, I was like, I'm not getting in that bathtub. But I know that scene, that was totally an homage. There was a couple, like Tommy and the writer, they had lots of little kind of Easter egg things speckled throughout. But I really wish people saw this movie. And, you know, the sad thing is, I think like if I was a bigger name, the movie would have reached a broader audience. And I always felt sad about that because it's such a great story. And the people that have seen it love it so much. And I don't know.
I think you should give yourself more credit because you're, especially for horror fans, you are a huge name.
Well,
and
thank you.
I think, we had, when we were researching you for this interview, we had heard you always kind of say like how much you enjoyed this movie. And I was like, why aren't people asking her more about this? And then we watched and I was like, oh my God, this performance is incredible. Like people need to be talking more about this film and more about your role in the film.
Thank you.
If we can help promote that, we'll do whatever. People need to check out the Id. I don't know if it's streaming right now, but you can get the DVD, you can get the Blu-ray, and it's sometimes it's streaming on different platforms. And, you get to see Amanda Wyss, so why wouldn't you?
And I think you can get it on Prime. I think, and sometimes it's on Tubi, sometimes it's on Freevee, sometimes it's on, it's all the different things, but you can definitely get the DVD. And God, do you guys have your computer open in front of you? What is Sean's last name? I feel bad. I want to make sure
Sean H. Stewart was the writer of the Id. Tommy Hudson was the director. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. And I just wanted to give him his props. And so anyway, I haven't had a role since. I mean, I've had a few on TV that I liked, but not like that. Like where I really got to like unzip my own skin and step into the skin of somebody else and help tell that story. And Tommy was so good at keeping me in the universe because and I mean, we pushed up against me going over the top, but I never quite go over the top.
Yeah.
We push up against it.
There's so many things I want to talk about, but I don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
Like your performance is like, how do I say this without giving anything away? There's moments that you did something and I told Matt, I was like, I would have probably have done the exact same thing. Like, so you really tap into like what people would do in that circumstance. I didn't give anything away.
I know, but that was good. I know there was just things, and it's just so like, when people come to the door and the people that came inside and just like the, me making hors d'oeuvres that people talk, quite a few people have come up, and I'm not going to give away, but I am making hors d'oeuvres. And there's something so sad about that. And so many people have come up and said, for some reason, that scene makes them cry. And then, all the things that ensue once the guests arrive. It's just so, but I loved making that movie so much. And I hope someday before I hang up my, dancing shoes, I get another role like that I like as much. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Just a few final questions before we wrap up. Why, in your opinion, going back to A Nightmare on Elm Street and just a legacy that's had for 40 years, which, by the way, happy 40th anniversary on A Nightmare on Elm Street.
I know.
Yeah. Why, in your opinion, do you think people love the original film so much and still love it 40 years later?
I think that what makes a movie endure, I think there's a couple things. One, it can be like a shock kind of movie that people, it's not good, but it's the movie you love to enjoy and laugh at and with. But I think like true classics in the horror genre, I think are just a really good story. Like Nightmare on Elm Street is just a really, really good story. He hired, in my opinion, all the right actors. Like we were perfect for those parts. We were the cutest kids in a small town. You know what I mean? Like, no, there's no supermodels in there. Well, except for Johnny. I mean, he was really gorgeous. And so was Nick. Actually, the two guys were like,
you two
I
ladies
think everyone was gorgeous in that movie.
So we were like, but like we were approachable. You know what I mean? We look like we could have lived next door to you. But I think ultimately the reason people love it so much, it was the introduction to Freddy. That is the movie where you could really imprint your own story about Freddy, because really he's only in the movie like a few more minutes than I'm in the movie, and he doesn't really talk that much. So you could really imprint on him whatever you want to imprint on him. And the other ones, he's more he was the main character without being seen in the first one. So it was very scary. And do you know what I mean? But like that it was a lot about Freddy was implied in the first one. And then also it was just a great script, great dialogue. And the story works so well about, are they in a dream? Are they not in a dream? Where by the third, fourth, fifth, there's like a formula happening. Like, oh, these kids are going to dream and he's going to be in the dream. And in the first one, you're not sure what's happening. And so I think that's part of it. And although people love all of the movies in the franchise, but I think that first one was just a really good story, a believable story. And because I think that's what makes things last, because it's something you can go back and watch over and over. And I think, but I'm
agree 100%.
I might be partial.
100%. No.
And when you go to horror conventions, what's the number one question people ask you?
Oh, about my death scene, 100%. Like, what was that like? What was it like in the spinning room? Just what was it like in the spinning room? And I think because it's something so unusual, and there's not many people that have done that. I mean, maybe astronauts. And then the movie, it was based on An American in Paris, I think. It was either Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire dances on the ceiling.
Yeah.
I think it's it's either Singing in the Rain or an American in Paris, and he dances on the ceiling. Well, that was also a low tech spinning room. Exact same. They used what's the word I'm looking at? Their whatever design they drew. That's what we built our room after. So there's not many people that have So when people ask, I'm always like, I know I've been asked it a million times, but it's the first time they're hearing it. And it's also, I realize like very few humans have ever been in that situation. Actors, non-actors, or whatever. Like it's just, how often are you in a room that spins around? Like never. So I understand like the curiosity about it.
Astronauts probably during training.
Yes. Astronauts, me and Gene Kelly.
Exactly. Look at that. Astronauts, Amanda Wyss, and Gene Kelly.
Very exclusive.
That sounds like a good Trivia Pursuit question. What does Amanda Wyss, Gene Kelly, and a bunch of astronauts have in common? Well, you've obviously embraced the horror genre throughout your career, which is something that horror nerds like us so appreciate, and makes us so incredibly happy. What would you say you enjoy most about making horror films?
Well, just as an actor, I like a good story. And by the way, I would do many more horror films. I'm not offered them. I wish I was. And the very few that I have been, and I've done a couple like ones, like I said, but I haven't been offered a good horror script since The Id. I just haven't. And so it makes me sad. I wish I was. But I would do them in a heartbeat. But I haven't been offered a good role. People want me to do cameo and stuff, but I don't want to be a jokey, oh, look, it's Tina from a Grown Up or whatever. Like I want to do like another The Id kind of thing. But anyway, what I love about them is finding the truth in extraordinary situations, because you're in extraordinary situations in a horror film. And I love trying to figure out how to make it make sense and make it real and make it as scary as possible. And I think it's the more real I can make it, the scarier it is for whoever's watching it, I think. And so I love that. I love that because, outside of like an Indiana Jones movie, there's not that many genres where you're trying to, or maybe like sci-fi things where you're trying to make sense out of extraordinary circumstances that aren't actual things that you might encounter in real life. So I like that.
I feel a horror film is right around the corner for you.
I hope so. I would love that. I would love a really great story, a great role. But like I said, I'm just flat out haven't been offered them. And
what are you working on something non-horror today?
Are there any new projects working or just waiting for that right script kind of thing?
You know what? It's been so slow for me since the pandemic, really, and then the strike. Like I've done a couple of TV episodics, but nothing since the strike. And so I'm like, oh gosh, I really, really, really want to work. Like my dream job would be like a horror TV series, like something along the lines of Stranger Things, like being the mom in Stranger Things, like oh my God, Winona Ryder's role type thing, although she was brilliant in it, but my version of something like that would be my dream job. Because I love the pace of television. It's kind of I feel the most at home in television. So I would love, that would be my number one dream job. And then like a really great, like A Quiet Place kind of role, something like that. A movie like that, I would just, gosh, it would just be so fun to create that character from beginning to end and see you grow in these extraordinary circumstances and, fight the monsters. And I don't know, I just think it would be nice to, and I did have realized like, I don't really want to die in another one. So like people always are like, and then you'll die and it'll be just like, I'm like, no. So I'm kind of like not interested in dying. But yeah, I'm like, I've done it like 7 times. So, yeah, I'm not,
you're good.
Anybody, I'm good. I've explored that option. But yeah, so I would love that if anybody out there that wants to go see The Id and you'll understand what I'm talking about. That's the kind of role I want, with like a really good filmmaker that knows what they're doing, and get it out there, get it in theaters and just be great. It would just be so much fun.
Well, we're putting it out there in the universe because we would love to see you in more horror, and not just like in as homage to Tina, but like there are so many horror TV shows, even based on property. I mean, they're doing like the Crystal Lake series that's going to be based on Friday the 13th, the Chucky series. But the thing about these series is that it's not just like retelling the movies, it's like expanding upon them, and which is really cool. So there's a lot of stuff hopefully on the horizon. So we're putting it out there in the universe for you because we would love to see you in more horror. We have one final question for you, Amanda. We ask this to all of our guests, and it's going to put you on the spot a little, but this has just been such a great interview. So thank you so much because we have been so grateful to have you on the show. What is one thing you can tell us about your experience, let's say working on the original Nightmare on Elm Street, that you've never told any other interviewer, podcaster, convention Q&A, or publication? Doesn't have to be like the biggest, gossipy type thing or even a huge detail, but just one thing that you've never told in an interview about your experience working on A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh my gosh. I've just talked about this movie so much.
I know.
When I had to get a plaster cast made of my head for this scene with the centipede and a plaster cast of my chest. And I remember literally freaking out and realized at that moment when they put this I was encased in all this plaster and I could only breathe through these straws in my nose, that I'm absolutely claustrophobic and afraid of small places. And I had no idea. And I literally had to stay in there for 45 minutes. They were trying to keep me calm. And I was like freaking out. And I mean, that was the true horror for me of making that movie, was being encased in this plaster cast, and I couldn't move. I could barely breathe out of my nose. And also I was like mortified because like I had to put all this plaster on my boobs. And I was like, these strange people I've never met before are like touching my boobs. What is going on in my life? I'm so not into this. But then when it was done, the head they made was so perfect. And people remember the centipede came out. But yeah, so I've never told anybody. I was 1000% traumatized filming Nightmare on Elm Street from beginning to end, standing in eels, handling worms, being spun around, just running down the nasty alley barefoot. They had to clean up needles and things from the alley before I ran down it because it was so grunged out. So I was traumatized from beginning to end.
Oh, you're talking so in that alley that you're running back and forth, that they were like drug needles?
Oh, drug needles and broken glass. And
it was the 80s.
I know. I was like, I'm going to get hepatitis and die.
Oh my God. I feel you because I
would
feel
be the same way.
I would be, yeah. That when I see like a head cast, like material stuff put all over you, I would freak out. I mean, I just am imagining you already had to do the death scene in that spinning room. Then you have a head cast made. Like, how much more torture?
And, ironically enough, the movie Maxine, which just came out in 1985, she puts on what's that?
The head cast.
Yeah, the head cast.
Like, yeah.
And so it's like, you have lived it.
Yeah, I mean, takes place in 1985. Right. You said it came out. Like, yeah. The movie Maxine, they have a scene where they're putting a head cast on and she freaks out during it. So I'm kind of like picturing that movie and then thinking about you.
I was totally freaking out and I was like, I was such a professional kid too. Like I was just raised to like do my job, keep my head down, be polite to everybody. But I was like, I'm like, I was so upset. It was terrible.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's new. Nobody else knows that.
No, that is great.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Look, we have had such a great time chatting with you today. Like, seriously, you are just such a breath of fresh air and so sweet. And we just really love talking with you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Right back at you. And I'm just thrilled beyond belief that you like the id, and that means so much. Like you saw, it made me cry. Like So grateful. And thank you for this beautiful chat. And I hope I see you guys somewhere, maybe at a convention someday or something.
Yeah, we would love to
Absolutely.
meet you in person. Thank you so much. Yeah, we would love to keep in touch. We hope to meet you someday in the future. We hope that you get a great horror movie role because you deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Perfect. Take care. Okay.
Bye,
Enjoy
guys.
your weekend. Okay, bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Happy Horror Time.
If you'd like to support the podcast, please sign up to be a patron at www.patreon.com/happyhorrortime. As a patron, you get access to all our bonus content, which now includes 2 new bonus episodes every month, a monthly after show mini episode, access to our Discord community so you can chat with us directly, and the chance to review a film with us in one of our bonus episodes.
Patrons also get all our regular episodes ad-free and a day early, our monthly newsletter, the chance to vote in polls, and autographed Happy Horror Time stickers.
I'm Matt Emmert.
And I'm Tim Murdoch.
And we hope you have a happy horror time.